Each season, summer, fall, and winter, spring, the Loft schedules a huge variety of writing classes. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce one of our instructors who is both a writer and an editor, Vaughn Foster Jr. Vaughn, could you please introduce yourself and tell us how you got involved at the Loft?
Sure. My name is Vaughn. I am, Savannah has said, a writer, an editor, and writing instructor in kind of different capacities. I got involved with the Loft, ironically enough, for my job as a therapist looking to do more mental health and fiction collaboration. And through that conversation, I learned a little bit more about the teaching artist position. And we decided that my role as both writer and editor would be a really good fit for teaching some classes and workshops.
And going off that, I'd love to hear more about this idea of mental health and writing and how you can sort of collaborate, um, for healing for the mind as well as creation.
Yeah, so a lot of my research is kind of focused on how a lot of these psychological journals or even just therapy, um, it can be very difficult to reach the general population of the country or even the world, whereas everybody watches TV, everybody reads, everybody is engaged in some form of media. So being able to incorporate accurate depictions of both positive mental health as well as struggles, and even how people can deal with certain situations through writing, can be really impactful, particularly for individuals who may never be able to access one of the really complicated articles floating somewhere in cyberspace that even psychologists have trouble tracking down.
And I also want to ask about your experience as an editor. So your upcoming class focuses on writing through an editorial eye. And I'd just like to know about how you bring that editorial expertise into the classroom.
Yeah. Whenever I am doing editing work for a client, whether that be with fiction or copy, usually is more in the fiction clients I work with. Um, I just don't feel comfortable just marking down, this is what you did wrong. Um, Here's your invoice, but so much of it is that collaborative, almost teaching with, this is why I'm crossing out these 3 pages here. This is why I'm saying this about your character. This is why we're doing this. Um, which a lot of it carried over to even when I did classroom instruction in the past. So for this upcoming class with a book editor's guide to writing, um, my intention is kind of to walk writers through, this is everything that your editor is going to dock you on, and how to really start with your best foot forward so that you're saving time and saving money and can really make the most out of that experience.
And so when students leave your class, what is it that you're really hoping they'll have gained?
What I'm hoping people will have gained is a better understanding of the writing process and what publications can look like. I think a lot of people, they have a story in their head or in their heart and say, this is what I want to tell, but aren't really equipped or familiar with both, these are the skills necessary to go down X path, or this is the best use of my time or resources. Um, and there are a lot of options people can do with the story. They can have it as a book, they can do a screenplay, they can do a comic book. And I'm hoping that with this class, people will walk away with a foundation of, these are things I need to keep in mind as I'm writing, as well as this is the best medium I should be using for my story, and have at least a familiarity of um, resources and people to reach out to as they're going forward.
Taking a Loft class for a lot of writers can be really intimidating, especially people who are newer to writing, and think that's compounded if you know that your instructor is also an editor. So how do you set the tone for the classroom that makes people feel welcome?
Yeah, I think I am a very person centered, more of a casual approach with any class that I teach. I always start with 3 questions. Who are you? What are your goals? and why are you here? Um, and I think really just diving into who each student is as a person and what their life experiences that they're bringing to this particular class um, really helps people feel more at home and less intimidated. Um, is more of I'm just a person who happens to know things about this topic, and I am providing that information and relationship rather than um, here's everything that you're doing wrong, um, or this is the only way to do things.
And speaking of getting to know people better as a person, I can confirm you're also involved in other creative forms. You're a musician as well as a writer. How do you see those two mediums playing into and off of each other?
I think there is a lot of carryover. Um, I think the most obvious example would be one of the first songs I wrote with a band became the foundation for a good 50 to 70% of my first novel that was published 2020, later again in 2021. A lot of my music and writing is very story based and character driven. Um, and it's just a different medium for that. I think within the production piece, music and editing are very similar in that it's a lot of going over the same material several times, many times, looking into those small details, um, and seeing, okay, what am I trying to get to? What do I have? What needs to happen? Um, so I think on just a brain level, music and writing can be a very similar headspace.
And with music, such a huge part of it is performance. And I feel like I can pretty safely say for a lot of writers, part of what appeals them about writing is that they aren't performing at all and they're sort of like hiding behind their own book world. So, how do you balance those two, I guess, personas?
Yeah, I don't know, because I think a lot of it, even writing at my keyboard, can feel very similar to writing out a guitar or piano piece. And there may even be music playing as I'm writing. And I think there is a lot of overlap and blending within just that creative process. Um, I think the balance really comes as far as when you're talking about marketing and social media and balancing different followings, different people, different events, um, which for that I could just say is probably just trial and error. And um, it's going to be a little bit difficult just because you can't perfectly blend everything. But at least for me, I consider my main product being myself. So it's a lot easier to kind of be a person who's doing different things versus um, I am a musician. This is my main thing than trying to weave writing into that or vice versa.
And how did you get into writing?
So I think the I'm thinking if there's a lot of different paths branching off in my head right now. I think the where I really started writing was maybe in a seventh grade typing class. A friend and I started doing short stories as one of the projects. And it kind of built through there. Then later in high school, I did a couple other short stories. And then when I got to undergrad, I decided to build off of one of those stories, which then later became my first novel, When We Were Still Human. Um, I think overall, I've always been a storyteller, whether that be as a little kid wanting to be a video game designer and having all the different storylines and characters and plots laid out in notebooks and poster boards. Um, so I think that element of storytelling and writing has always been a part of me. It's just been experimenting through different mediums until um, probably age of 16, 17 when I really kind of put my flag in the creative writing camp.
And for our final question, when you maybe talk to folks who are unsure about writing or even just trying to encourage people to take their writing a little further, what would you say is like the most beneficial aspect that people can gain?
I think the most beneficial aspect would be collaboration. A lot of people, particularly even with writers, can work in a vacuum of either just working and writing and writing and writing within their own space or even within their own group of people. Whereas I think one of the best things is to branch out and find beta readers, whether you're joining a Facebook group or one of the several websites that has beta readers editing and reading for points systems, or even just reaching out to an editor and just asking for a one chapter sample to go through just so you can get another set of eyes on what you're doing before you continue. Because that was one of my biggest mistakes when I was younger, was just, this sounds good, my friend said this was good, and then things start crashing and burn when you try to move forward. So yeah, I think just getting more feedback is one of the most beneficial things people can do.
All right, well, for our viewers, you can find Vaughn's classes as well as our full summer lineup by visiting loft.org/classes. Vaughn, thank you again so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you.